Hi, welcome to this episode of Industry Voice. And today I have Kevin McGrath from Meibel AI joining us and Alex Moy from insurtech.io Media joined us for this episode. Kevin, how are you today?
Hey, doing good. Thanks for having me.
Good. So, backstory here. I met Kevin at one of the local event here in Arlington, Virginia. The local event was AI Summit, right? Gov AI
Yeah, Gov
Summit.
AI Summit. Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
They all run
So
together. It's all something AI conference now. They're all the same.
it's a new draw, right?
Right.
So it was very interesting. I did a lot of interviews that day. And Kevin, I think you had the top two interviews. There was another gentleman that was very, very intelligent and had a really good interview, but yours was definitely up there. So I thought, it'd be great for you to come on the podcast, talk about what you've done, what your company is building, and also just give us like a look at the state of AI as of November 2024.
Right.
And what's it like to build an AI company? So, I'm give the mic over to you and mic's yours.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's a lot. Thank you. It's fun. It's really fun right now. AI specifically has injected a lot of excitement into an industry. I'm not going to say tech has ever been stagnant in any way, shape, or form, but you definitely go through these like peaks, valleys, and troughs, and then periods of excitement again. And AI has added that new level of excitement to the industry of where this thing is going to go. How is this going to add value to almost every industry, right? So a lot of people, including myself, like to equate this back to the cloud boom, right? So I've been in the industry, for a long time now. I started in the late '90s. So I've definitely seen the peaks and the valleys, a couple crashes along the way, and seeing the different technologies that come into play. And cloud, I think, was something that had as much excitement as AI today, right? Just the ability for back then a developer and engineer to get an API, and that API gave them the power of what used to have to go through a procurement office and then to supply chain management to get a server delivered into the data center and then rack and stack, right? Like that whole process got abstracted behind an API, and you had instant access to this power that you never had before. I remember years and years ago when I was an engineer, like just being able to get access to that without going through all the hoops and different things, um, to make that happen. It was amazing, right? And so what generative AI has done today, it's kind of done the same thing for the whole AI industry, and AI is as applicable across industries and across personas and across everybody else as even more so than I think the cloud was, because the cloud was still pretty much directed at engineers and technical people, but AI is kind of directed at everyone. But what generative AI has done specifically is, even though it's kind of a smaller part of the larger machine learning AI ecosystem, it's democratized AI to everybody. And yet again, it's basically exposed an AI to what you used to have to go through a data science team or a machine learning team to do. Now, I don't think those teams are under threat. I think there's going to be a lot more need for those teams going forward. But what's amazing about this is the power you now have to start using and seeing what AI can do for you is a keyboard and a prompt. Or for an engineer, it's an API call out to OpenAI or Anthropic or Claude or whatever you're using. And a lot of that complexity has been abstracted away. And I think whenever that happens, you kind of get this huge hype of what it can be. You come to the reality of what it is. And then you figure out, based on the reality, does it work into my business, and can I make money, and can I make revenue, and can I bank the revenue of my company on this thing, right? So it's a lot of the same questions in the early days of cloud, right? In the early days of cloud, you're like, am I going to bank the revenue of my company on running on this thing in somebody else's computer out in the cloud? And I think a lot of people are making the same decisions today. Like, am I going to bank the revenue of my company on this AI solution, which can kind of go any which way, and how do I control it? So that's a long way to get to what Meibel does. And I come from a long line of building at scale infrastructure. My last startup, Spotins, which was acquired by NetApp, Spot by NetApp, we specialized in infrastructure at scale, particularly cost optimization and infrastructure optimization of how you run in the cloud. Kieran was most recently at AWS, building AI and ML applications there. And then when we looked at the space, we were like, generative AI is so powerful, yet how do you understand how to build it correctly? And how can you actually use this thing for real world use cases? And Meibel is the idea that product and engineering teams today need a platform that starts and stops with measurement of every single part of the process, from ingestion to retrieval, of how you're creating these AI experiences for your organization. If you don't start and stop with measurement of how well your data is being used, how well a process is running, how well the AI is actually performing in production, without measurement, you're never actually going to get AI to do something super important for you at scale. That's our belief. So what we do is we target these product and engineering teams that are building AI, either for their product or within their organization. And we give them a platform that has measurability baked in at every part of the process. We handle the ingest, we handle the retrieval, we handle all the technology in between that needs to exist to make that happen. And we allow them to build applications, what we call a confidence score. And the confidence score actually measures uncertainty of what the AI is doing at every step of the process. Everything from uncertainty when it collects your data initially, to uncertainty during the retrieval process of how the AI put the answers together, to how it applied those output and those answers against the underlying LLM, and then how that output gets to you. And then with that measurement, you can do multiple things. Now you can decide, how do I make my AI better? How do I explain to my stakeholders how well my AI is doing? How do I use this score to decide if AI is going to be part of a large scale automation process, or do I need to bake human in the loop to make sure that I'm continuing to train and vet the outputs of the AI? With measurement, you can make all these decisions, and you can actually push AI forward.
So that's really interesting, Kevin, because as these models have been coming out, I think to your point, experienced data scientists, they have methodology around how to use tools like this and to measure the performance. And I think as it's become more accessible, more democratized, like you were saying before, there's opportunity to use the tool, but a lot of people don't know how to measure and manage each component of that. So, in your experience, and how does this tool, or how does your approach really enhance that experience, or make it easier for folks that are maybe not from that test and learn methodology or data science field?
Thank you for watching this video. Now a quick message from our sponsor, Mav.
Thanks, Jeff. I want to let you all in on a secret that top producing agencies don't want you to know about. If you're in P&C insurance, you know firsthand how much you're getting squeezed by your call center. It's becoming less predictable and less economically profitable to scale. But here's the thing. The top producing agencies making over $100 million are not running their leads through a human-based call center. They're running them through an AI expert like Mav to qualify, quote, and hand deliver the highest intent qualified leads to your agents. Mav takes care of the back and forth, having unlimited 24/7 conversations with your leads that are personal and relevant so you can scale to the moon. Ready to ditch your call center and 10x your agency? We're giving the listeners of insurtech $15,000 worth of credit to try Mav. Head to hiremav.com/insurtech to claim this offer.
Our first customers are actually, product and engineering teams that don't have large house data science teams, right? Because they have to make a decision, right? You have to make a decision. I'm gonna start using generative AI today. You've done a science project, right, within your organization. You're like, generative AI is going to do something exciting for me. You've already pulled it off the shelf. You've used Gemini or OpenAI, ChatGPT, whatever it is, and you've seen the excitement. And what you quickly realize is that it's about 60 to 80% directionally correct at any given time, right? Now, what product and engineering teams are kind of used to is they're used to a deterministic output, right? So you're used to, hey, if I'm going to send in A, B, C, then I'm going to write unit tests that look for X, Y, Z on the other side. You can't do that with generative AI and AI tools. And a lot of data scientists and other machine learning experts know this. But for your, I don't know, we're going to call them traditional product and engineering teams. I don't want to call them that, but like for product and engineering teams without a data scientist on them, they may not be used to these methodologies. And so the measurement helps, right? Because measurement is now a score where you can measure an output of a score, and the score can take into account the variability of the output, right? Where does this answer sit in the total set of answers that could actually happen? How many sparse and dense vectors did I use to create this answer? All these other things that team now doesn't have to think about to put together. They can look at in the score, and then if they want to, they can take that score and they can unravel it, and they can look at all the attributes that go into that score. And then what the platform can do, it can direct them, without a data science team, to say, hey, look at this set of data. Look at your data heat map. Look where AI is getting its answers from. Look at your prompt. Your prompt is actually telling your AI. Your AI is actually grabbing the answers out of your prompt and not your data, right? So we can unmask a lot of this, but I don't want to leave data science teams out of the mix either, because there's a lot of data science teams out there that are very, very good at kind of building traditional models, and in development and deployment of those models, they build and test and verify the model as it goes out. But how do you measure that in production? And I think measuring how a model acts and how AI outputs act with prompts and everything else associated live in production is a task that hasn't necessarily been solved, and one that we're on the path to solving at Meibel, right? Like we want to solve for that live in production. How am I running today? How am I running every second of every day? How do you sit with the customer in production, and not just hand over a model that says, hey, this model's been tested, but then when the customer puts it in production, they're not getting the expected outputs. Like, how do you live and breathe with the customer in production and make sure that the application is running well? I think that last step, there are people out there who do this work, don't get me wrong, but that is not a widely solved for problem in the industry right now.
One thing that I've heard a lot of in this space, and I think it was a Y Combinator interview, and they were talking about how do you build a moat in this Gen AI world, right? How do you protect your company or your idea when it's moving and growing and shifting so fast, right? And we're hearing that technology in this space is becoming obsolete in like less than 18 months.
Right.
Right. Like you could think of all those image models, right? That was back in the day, and it was really, really exciting. And now you can do text in image, you can edit parts of it. So, as people are thinking about this, like what I'm hearing is there's all these test cases, right? We're talking about reliability. Like, how do I know that if I do this 1,000 different ways, that this prompt is still going to get me the result that I want? Right. And I think, my understanding is as you develop that testing methodology, that becomes the moat, right? Because you have put in the time, the work to develop all of these test cases. So if the underlying model changes, your data input changes, or user experience changes, that you can still go back and test and verify that you're getting what you expected. And so, like, what's your take on how your tool is doing that, and how does that help like other product engineering teams build that moat so that they're covering all their edge cases, or their reliability of their tooling is much, much higher because they tested thousands of different use cases?
Right. So I think there's a couple levels there, right? So I think there's a moat for us to build as Meibel. And then I think there's a moat for customers to build, which AI is a component of, but not necessarily maybe the defining feature of what they need, but AI helps them get there, right? And I'll try and explain both of those. So for Meibel specifically, we see our moat as a very opinionated and sophisticated, comprehensive way to come up with a confidence score that you can trust and rely on per experience that you deploy. We are a platform that you can rely on to measure and score how your AI is doing. And we are also an AI ops pipeline that you can choose to use us for your full pipeline, or we can integrate into your LangChain or Llama Index or whatever tool that you're using today. But where we really shine is how we do our multi-level ingestion, our multi-level retrieval, our process around how we store information, not only in vectors, but graph references, knowledge graphs, labeling, everything that we do in the middle to make sure and we understand how the process is relating to a confidence score, and how we seamlessly integrate into your current workflow. We're not looking to come in and replace a complete technology stack that you have today. We're looking to integrate with it. So I think for us, being as easy to integrate with as possible and bringing as much production value instantly to what you do. There's a lot of statistics out there that AI projects, 80% of them don't make it to production. Some of those statistics go up as high as 90%. I've seen them all over the place. I've seen a lot of investments say we're companies throwing a lot of money at AI right now, and they're not seeing a lot of that value actually make it into the tools that they need to get to. And while I think that will rapidly change, I don't think any of those projects, the 80%, the bulk of these projects that we're spending money on right now that aren't moving, I don't think they can move forward without sophisticated measurement. And I believe we have the best sophisticated measurement in the market, right? And I believe that's our moat. And I believe, both Kieran and I come from running large scale production, revenue reliant applications. And that's where our mindset comes from. Like, how do we keep your company up and running? And how do we keep your best mindset in our product, right? So you can rely on us. And I think that's our moat, right? No disclaimers. If something goes wrong, we sit there with you, right? And we're not telling you AI is going to be right 100% of the time, but we're going to tell you is our confidence score is going to tell you how right it is at a very high level of accuracy. So I think that's our moat, and that's where we have to sit. And it's going to be a crowded industry. Everyone who had a domain name now has a .ai domain name after their domain, right? So everybody's an AI company. So carving out that space and understanding where we sit is very important to us. The second part of your question, how do our customers build a moat? And I think this is very important because our customers are customers who have product and engineering teams, but they create a lot of cool applications and applications that don't necessarily, scream AI at you at the end of the day. We have customers in the construction space that work on specification plans and billing materials and different things like that, supply chain management, finance companies, opportunities with different parts of the military and public sector. And they're not necessarily slapping AI as their product is AI in front of their customers. However, AI is now making their product better than the other products in the marketplace, right? So to build specification plans in the construction industry, if AI allows you to turn around the plan in hours, as opposed to what used to take a consulting firm, a month, that's amazing. Right? And you don't necessarily slap AI on top of that unless you really want it to be there. But the power of AI now and the foresight for a company like that to take their product and engineering team and say, hey, we're gonna make our bet on this, and this is what's going to push us forward in the space. That's how you build a moat in multiple different verticals and industries and stay ahead of the curve. And I think a lot of companies did that back in the cloud days too, right? So a lot of companies that couldn't put out the capital investment to build their own data center to scale in the digital world used the cloud. And you saw all these cloud companies, for the first time, you saw like these much smaller companies competing with huge companies in the market because they could get a cloud API. So I'll go back to that. And now with generative AI, if you can measure and use this in the correct way, the power you have as a smaller to a smaller enterprise to an SMB or something like that to to really take over a market that you thought your piece of the market was this smaller pie, but now you can go for a much bigger pie because you can do way more than you ever thought possible before. I think that's the possibility of what AI brings to the marketplace now.
Jeff, and I'd be curious about your thought, because I think you and I were talking about this the other day, and there's now the potential for billion-dollar companies with 30 people teams, right? I know you were mentioning that the other day.
Remember I said there was 2 interviews that I really loved from Gov AI Summit. That's the other one, you know, it's in the drop. It's in our pipeline to drop on the video, but gentleman was saying the same thing. He was like, you're gonna see people create billion-dollar company with less than 20 people teams. And you know, I've been really quiet. This is probably the quietest episode I've been, just because I've been taking all in what Kevin's saying. And then, you know, everything you say, I'm just trying to like forecast, like in my head, like what else is a change? Like there's like change, and then there's like domino effects change that we don't really think about. So Kevin, let's just say you guys hit your mission, right? What industry domino effect do you see? What industry is going to be affected the most?
That's a great question.
What kind of companies will be affected the most?
I think AI is such a big market, right? And let's focus on generative AI for a minute, because that's the hot one right now. I think generative AI has a way to revolutionize some of the more traditional industries in a way that we have not yet seen before. Think about industries that still run on paper, industries that still run on tons of unstructured data, industries, you know, finance industries and mortgages and things like that still rely on you, you know, scanning like papers and sending PDFs around. The construction industry still, you know, it depends on images taken at construction sites and sent over, and humans reading those things and understand and making guesses about like what should change in the field. I think there's a lot of industries out there that technology has helped over the years, but hasn't necessarily revolutionized. And I think some of those industries with generative AI, because when you think of generative AI, you think about, you know, what was a human doing that I can now augment or make better with AI, right? So you think about it a different way. You don't think about like, hey, what technology do I put in underneath and automate? But like, I wasn't able to hire these 5 humans the other day. Can I make the humans I have more powerful with generative AI in some way, place, or form? And I don't think replacement is there. I think a lot of people confuse the excitement of what generative AI can do as person replacement. And I don't think that's it. I think there's a ton of work out there, and some industries might change and the direction might change a little bit, and some job descriptions might change a little bit. But I think the efficiency and scale at what a human will be able to accomplish is amazing. And I think if you kind of look at some of these more traditional industries that you don't associate with the most modern technology, might have the most to gain, the most revolutionized gain, I would say, out of especially generative AI and some AI technology. Now, how does AI change going forward? You got to embrace it, right? And I think it becomes a tool in the tool bag that everybody needs to use going forward, whether you're a musician or a teacher or an artist or, you know, or a data scientist, right? Like AI is going to help you do things and think about things and associate with things that you never saw possible, because the amount of data that you can process and the amount of data that you can take in and come to a conclusion on is far greater than what you've ever been able to do before. And people who are good at using that new tool in their tool belt are going to think of some pretty darn creative things it's going to be very hard to predict, but it's going to have to be a tool in everybody's tool bag going forward, in my opinion.
I have so many questions. This is not enough time for an episode. Kevin, you work with many industries. You know, our audience here, a lot of fintech, a lot of insurtech, some cyber maybe, right? What industry do you see is taking advantage of the AI movement today?
That's a great question. I think the industries that you saw, and again, I'll put it on generative AI for now, because I think there's a lot of industries that have been using AI, right? Like I don't know, how long ago did IBM announce Watson, right? You know, this is AI has been, and you'll hear a lot of people, they'll be like, I've been doing AI for 40 years, right? You know, and it's been there. And I don't mean to make fun, but AI itself has been there for a long time. The reason we're all sitting here talking about it now is because kind of like the generative AI revolution. And what you've seen a lot with the initial onset of that are you've seen a lot of kind of like these CS agents and technical support agents and things like that. And I think those industries were the first and immediately hit in this space. Like, how do I interface with my customers at scale in a more efficient way, right? And that's what I see proliferated kind of throughout the industry right now is a lot of agents, a lot of agents that communicate with customers. However, all of those agents come with some sort of disclaimer, right? So a lot of those agents right there out there right now, you know, there's been some mistakes made in the industry, and legally people are trying to figure out if those agents are, you know, legally required to be correct or not. But a lot of times you'll find a big disclaimer at the bottom of the site, like, this is an AI agent and it's only supposed to try and help you. And, you know, if it says something wrong, it's not on us, right? Like, there's a lot of legal disclaimers going on those things. I think those are going to get better. I think there's a lot of companies working on those to become better and better and better. I think the next thing that's been the biggest implementation of generative AI behind those type of agents are in the coding field, right? Just being able to bootstrap and code faster than you've ever been able to code before. We use technology like that to code at Meibel, right? You know, our engineers are able to code faster than I've ever seen engineers release stuff in my history, because not because the AI is coming up with creative code, but the bootstrapping and the structure and the instant gratification of knowing how to set up, you know, different types of architecture and things like that within the code base come instantly, right? All the boilerplate that you need to have, it comes instantly. You know, how do I write this? How do I do this? Like, you can work so much faster. And I believe there's other areas too where augmentation has taken over and has made people better. So I think those are the areas where that I've seen AI help out the most. And where I see AI going forward, you know, not necessarily attached to Meibel right now, but AI and robotics. I think that's a match made in heaven. And if I had a robotics background, you know, maybe I'd be doing. I think my second thing that I'm looking at besides AI infrastructure, which we're involved in at Meibel, is AI and robotics. And I think while we're at the early stages of that, I think, like, when I talk to my kids, you know, one of my sons is very interested in tech and things like that. And I'm trying to push him in the AI robotics space, right? So he's young, he's in middle school right now, but, you know, when he gets to college, like, if he's in that space, I think he'd be in a very good space because he's excited about those kind of things, right? And then from a Meibel point of view, we want to help, you know, put AI into all these different applications so it's reliable. And that's what we want to help. We want to start helping make generative AI more reliable and trustworthy in all these different applications. We want to be that infrastructure play under the hood that's driving all of these things to be better and better over time.
I have a lot of questions. Just disclaimer. Elon now is part of Trump cabinet, right? The election just happened. They're in the House, right? So Elon always on X talk about regulation, and you know, we know that there's a well-documented public beef between him and Sam Altman.
Yeah,
you know how they turn a nonprofit company into a for-profit, and Elon's angry about that. But he's been screaming regulation for AI for a long time. He said two things: biggest threat to society is birth rate decline, collapse of civilization, and also AI. You know, not regular. He didn't even put nuclear weapons or war on top three.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Well,
So what do you see regulation going this coming year with Elon being part of Trump's cabinet?
I don't know, man. Regulation's hard. Executive orders are something that you can't really predict, and you know, I'm not a political expert, and I try not to dive into politics. I would like to, in a perfect world, you'd like to see, a reasonable committee put together to try and figure out, how to rein in AI. Or not rein it in, but put the right parameters on it. I am a person who doesn't believe, so I don't believe in no regulation, right? I live in a capitalistic society. I'm doing a startup, right? I have a very capitalistic nature. I've also seen when you just let private companies do whatever the hell they want, that's not good either, right? There is a good space for government to come in and kind of put some guardrails, right? You need not to put enough guardrails. You can't tighten it up enough that you lose kind of the innovation out of the United States. And I don't think we're going to do that. The United States is still leading in innovation in almost everything that we do. I think one of the more interesting things that I'm following, and I don't necessarily have the answer for yet, is that there was in the previous administration this kind of wantingness to break up the big clouds, like the Google, the Azure, the Amazons. And there's, a big theory right now that if the US wants to lead the AI race, you have to have these big companies with these big power supplies and these big data centers. And if you start breaking these companies up, how does that affect how you can play in the AI race and how does that work? So I think there is a nuance there. And I think you will see maybe AI might change that perspective a little bit on whether they're going to be as proactive as coming in and saying they're going to break up particularly the cloud parts of these bigger companies and how they go about that. I don't know. I'm not an expert in this thing. I think Elon says a lot of things. I have no idea how he'll be in the government. I think a government is a completely different beast. Government to me is something that's set up for social good. And it shouldn't necessarily be run as a business, and businesses should be run as a business. So, we'll see where things go. Hopefully it comes in and, he brings in some smart people. I think Elon does say a lot of smart things. I think he's a very smart person. Let's see what the difference is between I need to get likes and I actually want to see where the industry is going. Your guess is as good as mine on that one. People change when, when they have to actually be in control of a greater good. So let's see what comes with that. I know that's kind of a roundabout answer, but I believe there does need to be regulation. I think the regulation needs to be put in on more of being responsible for AI producing output that a human would not be allowed to produce either, right? So anything, you have free speech until you impede on somebody else's rights. AI shouldn't be able to impede on anybody else's rights either. I think I'll leave it there because I don't know how to go much deeper on that, but I think we need a lot of pragmatic people thinking about this, and I hope it's not judged by how many retweets or a Twitter poll or an X poll at the end of the day.
Good answer. So for fun, I'm Googling on the side, right?
Yep.
How many AI patents does China have is what I put in. They have
Oh, okay.
38,210 and US have 6,276.
Right.
South Korea has 4,155, Japan has 3,400, and India has 1,300.
All right.
How do we lead the world in race on AI?
I mean, we keep doing what
Where do we start?
We're leading it now. I mean, ChatGPT didn't come out of China, right?
Yeah.
China's very good at scaling and replicating. I don't think they've turned the corner on out innovating us just yet. And I'm not saying it's not going to happen. I'm just like current state of affairs, right? I'm not trying to be boisterous too much about the US, but I think we got to keep on the path that we're going. Patents are one way to look at it. China's patents aren't really enforceable in the US, and US patents absolutely are not enforceable in China. So I don't know if that's the number that you want to go look at, but I think the US has been great for innovation. I still think we're the innovation leader in the world. I think what we do, from our VC communities to how we look at investment to how we take bets, right? We take bets on people creating technology, and we're willing for 90% of those people to fail to find the 10% that will make it, right? And that's a very powerful thing. So it's a different way to look. So when I look at that metric as a startup, I go, well, shit, 90% of startups fail. Why would I get into this, right? But if you look at that from like an industry perspective, the US is willing to bet their money on 10% making it, which allows you to cultivate so many ideas and so many practices. And the fact that if someone doesn't make it, it's not a bad thing, right? There's a lot of people who try something, don't make it, try again, try again, try again. That spirit in America is amazing. I think there's a few other countries out there that have that spirit. You know, I'm not sure that China has that exact spirit yet, and I don't know if we're going to get like plowed in the comments for this or anything, but I think they're very good at taking an idea and maybe making it cheaper, making it better, make it faster, make it scale more. I still think they're very good at that, and that's a complete that's a skill in and of itself that's very hard to replicate. You've seen other countries like maybe India and some other countries try and replicate you know, what's there. But that's a very hard thing to replicate as well. And I don't think the US is as good as what China does in that aspect, right? But I do think we stay in front of this race for now. You know, we got to keep doing that, right? You just got to keep that spirit up, and you got to keep allowing those people to be in your country who do those kind of things.
So I want to go back to a comment you said about your kid. How old is your kid?
I have four, actually. 14, 12, 7, and 4. Or 8.
Right.
Sorry, just had a birthday over the weekend. 8. So I'm just messing
My
up.
daughter's just had a birthday as well. She turned 6.
But yeah, so I have 4, and yeah, they're great.
So go back to your comment. You live in Maryland. I live
Yep.
in Virginia. I always think this area is a disadvantage for builders, especially if you're a tech builder, because of the talent that's in New York, in Boston, in Silicon Valley. How do you, in the world of AI building, how do you rate the top area in the US in terms of building tech? What will be your top 5?
Oh, wow, that's a tough question.
Thank you for all your support to our channel. Here is a quick word from our sponsor. Please click on the link below in the comment section to sign up for a demo with Track AI.
What if your insurance sales conversations could work harder for you? Meet Track, your AI-powered conversation intelligence partner. Track automatically captures and analyzes every customer interaction, providing instant call summaries, risk analysis, and AI-driven coaching insights. Say goodbye to manual note-taking and hello to more selling time. Track handles the admin work while you handle the revenue. Fully integrated with your favorite platforms. Plus, get custom AI analysis tailored to your unique business needs. Transform your sales team's performance with Track. Visit track.ai today.
Click the link in the description below to schedule a demo with Track today.
You know, the US, Silicon Valley still has a lot of people out there. I think Silicon Valley has started to split up across the United States. I think there's a lot of tech hubs in a lot of cities now starting up, obviously. Silicon Valley's kind of spread out to Austin, or up to, I should say, up to Seattle first, obviously, where the cloud providers are. So you got Silicon Valley up to Seattle, you have down to Austin. On the East Coast, you have hotbeds starting up everywhere from Charlotte to Raleigh to Atlanta to New York, right? Everybody's coming a tech, you know, kind of a tech city, and it's even spreading into the Midwest now, right? You have places like Nashville where it's getting a lot more appealing to go out and hire more technical talent and different things like that. So I think it's spreading. I've never been one to say like you have to be in a particular city. I've been able to build pretty good career living in Maryland my entire life. I do think it's a great area. I think it's an area with a lot of diversity, which I think you miss maybe in some other cities. You get a lot of people who come in, you get a lot of transplants combined with people who've been here, you get the government / with commercial. I think you get a lot more, you know, you do get a little bit more pragmatic way to look at building things maybe on the East Coast than the visionary, how I want to see things in maybe 20 or 30 years that you get on the West Coast. So it kind of depends on what you're building, you know, at the time. If you look across the world, I think, and I'm going to be a little bit biased here. You know, I managed a large team in Israel for a large number of years. And there's a reason why they are, you know, the startup capital of the Middle East and maybe even one of the biggest startup capitals outside of the United States. They embody a lot of the things that I was just talking about how the US needs to stay ahead. I think they do a lot of that there as well. And you know, there's other countries all over the world that are starting up, right? Aladison is out of Australia, right? You know, Sydney to Canberra, and you know, the areas down in Australia have a very big tech base. In APAC, you have South Korea, which has an amazing tech sector. So that's to name a few. I wasn't prepared for that being an answer, so I'm just kind of, you know, shooting off the top of my head here, but you know, those are personally areas that I've been involved with over time. Ireland, obviously, Ireland is a place that has a lot of tech investment going into it now as well. I think they're still on the early days, but I think they have a really great trajectory of where they're headed and how they're bringing in tech talent in that area. And I think they're still in the EU, which makes them, you know, a great bridge between the United States and Europe. So you got a lot of great places out there across the world that I don't know how much AI comes into the mix to making those. I think the spirit of how you want to build, and I think that original spirit of what I said in the US is how we're willing to invest and see things fail to see a few things succeed. Other countries have to have that same level of investment, and the countries that kind of replicate that model, I think you'll see specifically in this industry are the ones that will shine.
I'll take one last question before I hand it over to Alex. But
Sure.
all right, so don't judge me.
All right.
Disclaimer. I was watching the UAP and UFO hearing yesterday in Congress.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if you caught it, but November
Nope.
13th, November 13th, Congress had one of the biggest showings since it's open to public of hearings, right?
Right.
And it was a senator, I think, from South Carolina. She was doing the questioning, and NASA people was doing the answering, and some other government people talking about who are driving these spacecraft that our military jets are observing, and you know, they're like on YouTube, on TikTok. These videos are all there, right? And then she was like, is it possible it's a human being, or is it possible it's extraterrestrial life that's in those spacecraft, right? And the answer was stunning. And he was like, a human body can handle 9G on the G-force scale pushed, and it can only handle a limited amount of time before you pass out, where your body just completely give up or die. And these aircraft, they're observing on film, stalking our military, either ship or planes, are traveling at 3,000 Gs. So I was like, well, if we want to travel faster, also building, you know, drones that fly faster, is we need to put AIs in these machines. And then, you know, next thing is Star Wars and Skynet thoughts, right? How far do you think we are away from putting AIs in these hypersonic drones?
I mean, I don't think we're far from putting AI. I mean, that whole, like, go back to AI and robotics. I mean, I think this is a match made, you know, for a long time here, right? And it's how far do you want to push it? I mean, it's taking the self-driving car and pushing it further. I think what you've seen is there's a lot of hype around what it can do, and then in practicality, how you can use that in the real world, right? Like, self-driving cars have been next year for 8 years now, right? And there's a reason. It's the old 80-20 rule, right? Like 80% of the work, and then the last 20% takes 80%, you know, yada yada. Like, those nuances to figure out at the end are very tough. What I do think that you're seeing today, and I think will probably be the norm for a little while here, is human controlled, you know, drones or AI powered but human monitored, right, drones with a takeover of some sort, right? Totally anonymous. I think, especially for military, like, you don't want like terrible things happening to your own people and communities and things like that. So I do think you're going to see a lot more technology augmented with human oversight for a while. I don't know how close we are to like a fully autonomous, you know, thinking thing that's in the air. You know, our principal scientist Spencer, he was working on AGI for years before he joined us. He's got a PhD in computational neuroscience out of BU. And he said, you know, one of the things that he realized is, you know, once we attain AGI, it's kind of over, right? Like, once you actually obtain AGI, the computers, if they can do everything you do and they're smarter than you and faster than you and everything else, like, it's over, right? Like, it's like you're no longer there. But he also believes it's way further out, way further out in the future than the marketing and the hype cycle has it today. And that's somebody who's been intimately dealing in it, did his PhD in it, things like that for years, a little bit more pragmatic look at that. So that's kind of a roundabout with saying, like, I don't know the exact things that you're talking about. It's not something that I follow, but something that I do follow and the people I do talk to, I think, within the next, 10 to 20 years, we're talking about human oversight of technology that is AI enabled in some way, shape, or form that maybe doesn't have a human in the cockpit, but has a human in control somehow. And how that moves forward, we'll have to see. I mean, I think you look at the war in Ukraine and Russia, they're already doing things like this, right? So it's at the early stages of that, but I think that next rung on the ladder, right? We always get disenfranchised sometimes with, like, how spaced out the rungs on the ladder as you get higher and higher up and closer to the goal, because you climb up so fast, like the rungs are really close together, but then to get to like that next thing, the rungs become further and further and further apart, and to get to that next rung becomes harder and harder and harder and harder. And I think we've done the rapid climb, and to get to where you're talking about, I think is going to take a little bit more time, right? Because think about how much power, like even the robots that you see today, there's still a cloud that's powering the technology behind that robot. The robot doesn't have all that battery and technology and everything sitting in the robot to be completely autonomous. Like, think about the power source you need. Think about like all the different things you need for that thing to be, fully autonomous. There's a lot of technology that needs to be built to make that actually fully viable. And I just don't think, I don't think we're there yet, but I think a lot of hybrid solutions will definitely pop up.
All right, so I'll chime back in and just taking it to a different angle, and probably the last thing that we'll talk about today. But we're talking about the future in AGI, and we talked about generative AI and all the things that applications wise. But we're talking about where everybody's spending their time, focus, and energy, attention on. What do you think is the most ignored industry or segment out there that could use Gen AI, but you just don't see a lot of energy in that particular sector?
Are still kind of missed by a lot of people, right? I think one of the things that we unfortunately lose over time is the creativeness of the non-technology sectors, right? And I think we see it in music, right? Because we talk about how AI can mimic a pop artist or come up with a new song or things like that. And I think we talk about digital art and stuff, but what about in our physical world? I think we miss a little bit. We put too much technology on that, and we miss the experience of a human pulling in their surroundings and using reasoning and other life experiences to put together, art that is not language based or semantic based. And maybe AGI changes that at some point in time, but I do think maybe people gloss over that maybe a little bit too much.
Awesome. So it sounds like a lot of these arts and the aspects that make us human at the end of the day are going to be things that continue to have even more value in the future, because all the technical bits are going to be solved for with Gen AI.
Yeah, I think people confuse LLMs with being human, and it's not. Like, LLMs are still let's get to it. Like, LLMs at the end of the day are what's the next best word, right? And I'm glossing over a lot of things, and I'm sure people will have a lot of comments about that. But LLMs they are about what's the next best word, right? Now, there's a lot of things that go in around that context, things like that, and we wouldn't be building an AI platform ourselves if all we were doing was predicting the next best word. But I say that because we're not at life experience and human reasoning in AGI, and we're not there. And there are people maybe working to get there, and it'll be interesting. You have a lot of people saying we're closer or further away or different things like that. But I do think that it takes a lot to get there. And I personally don't think we're there, from a technology or power or understanding space. I mean, I almost think to get there, you're going to have to see some revolutionary breakthrough in a power source before we get to that level. That's not necessarily my level of expertise, but I think you're going to have a, like, one of the amazing things about humans is we can do all we do with the energy that is provided to us. For generative AI to do what it does, the amount of energy that we need to provide to it, right, is very different. And it still takes energy to do stuff. So we've kind of gotten like real far away from, you know, uh, building a chatbot, so to speak. But I think the energy sector could revolutionize. Like that could be the thing that you're not looking at that actually revolutionizes the future, right? Is who's going to revolutionize how we create energy.
What does next 12 months look like? Roadmap for Meibel AI.
For Maybell, we are, we're switching back to the current stuff. We're executing. We want to start helping people build these AI experiences in production. We want to be the infrastructure layer that any corporation who's looking to use generative AI to build extraction utilities, classifications, anomaly detectors. You can even build agents, right? We want to be the preferred platform that is doing the measurement and sitting with you in production to make sure those generative AI experiences are accelerating your business forward, allowing you to do things you've never been able to do before, building products that generate new revenue lines that you've never thought possible. We want to be the infrastructure platform that allows you to be as creative as possible in your vertical and doing what you're doing. So whether you're in insurance, you're in construction, you're in the public sector, we want to give you the confidence that you can use the AI technology that exists today to accelerate your business in a way that you've never thought possible. So that's our goal over the next 12 months.
So you guys have basically like a consulting arm, and every company approach you guys start the consulting project with them, see what their needs are, and then go from there.
We'll work with consultants. We don't really have a consulting arm ourselves. A lot of companies that come to us already have the project that they haven't been able to get to production, and we're going to help them get it to production, right? You're going to be able to build that AI application with our platform, and you're going to be able to get to production what you weren't able to get to production yesterday. There are a couple of consulting partners that we work with if they're working on a larger project, but Meibel itself is a technology company. So we don't have consultants today.
Maybe on me.
That's a good question. So my co-founder, Meibel, is his idea. He originally wanted Chisel AI. If you're out there, whoever owns that domain, you wanted way too much money for it, and we couldn't afford it at the time. So so he looked up the word
What was the
chisel.
amount?
He looked up the word chisel in other languages. There's a word, Meibel, that also means chisel, but that domain was already taken, so we kind of misspelled Meibel, and that became our name. So it's not very exciting, but this day and age where you have to try and find a meaningful name plus a available domain that you can afford are interesting things, right? So, but we like the name. It's short. We wanted to keep it short. We wanted to keep it 2 syllables. We wanted to keep it something people will remember. So, we're happy with it, and that's that.
When I Googled it, it says Norwegian spelling of Meibel, related names, baby names.
Oh,
That's
okay.
what.
Yeah.
That was like the third thing that popped up.
Yeah. Hopefully, it's also a name that we can own. So that'll be good too, right? Yeah.
That's cool. Kevin, you've been an amazing guest. Like, I always learn something new every time I talk to you. So I'm looking forward to speaking with you again. And maybe this podcast can bring you some clients from the insurtech insurance industry.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. Real pleasure meeting you at GovAI. Thank you for having me on the podcast, and more than happy to talk to any of your subscribers about AI in general, or what they're trying to do in their business to bring AI to production and help their business be better than everybody else in their industry. So more than happy to have those conversations.
Right. I'm going to send you an intake form, and then so our audience can find you, but you can find Kevin McGrath on LinkedIn, and maybe I'll spell Meibel.
That's it.
All right.